As you can see, the POS, that's poor Old Sears, has made it home to Area 51 finally. And today I'm just going to give you a quick look at it. This thing is more or less completely bone stock, except for this fantastic high dollar paint job, which was probably done 20 years or so ago, and it's flaking and peeling all over the place. I probably didn't prep it particularly well. And the seat's been changed out. You can kind of tell by that seat pan that's not factory stock. Everything else seems to be. What's left of the original data plate can be seen ahead of the seat there. I know you can't read that, but I can. And still got, from what I could tell, the original tires. I believe they're tubed. Can't see how they hold air otherwise, but they do say Sears on them. And they're 22.5 by 750 by 12 in the rear. And in the front you can see the rubber's kind of fried up there. These are Firestones. I have no idea if those would have been the stock offerings at the time, but they're cracked and ugly to the point where I'm perfectly willing to believe they're 40 years old. More than 40 really. I'll just pop around to the other side here and get you a look at the 12 horse HH 120 Tecumseh engine with the starter generator. More crappy paint, more crappy tires. Yep. I don't know if I have a prayer of getting underneath here, but yeah, there you have it, folks. There's your Roper 633 A38 transaxle. That would be your 3-speed with dual range. And I find it kind of interesting that if such a thing were marketed these days, it would be called a 6-speed, and we all refer to them as 6 speeds, and it's accurately a 6-speed because nobody ever counts reverse. But if you look at this old factory shift plate, you can just see it actually says 8-speed, and I think that's kind of funny. That's a cute little marketing ploy there, appealing to the stupid, I suppose. Now, one of the things I had to deal with on this thing before I could drive it was the steering. A rod end let go, and if I can just bring you underneath here, you can probably see where I cut off and welded on a new rod end. This is one of those kinds of steering rods where the rod end is just part of the rod, and if the end goes bad, you're supposed to throw out the rod and replace the whole thing. And of course that wasn't a fast easy option. I needed a fast easy option, so I just did a cut and weld at the right length, and away we go. That'll do me for the moment. But yeah, that with the drag link disconnected, I couldn't steer the thing, and that's kind of important. The other little bit of hideous I had to deal with was the carburetor. And in a few minutes I'll take you inside the shop and show the original carburetor and what I had to deal with. But here's the short version of the story. I've got a carburetor off, I think it was a Tecumseh HM 100. It was, you know, a fairly similar sized engine, and it's doing the job. As you can see, I've got the choke wired part way shut there, and I'll explain that in a second. And here I've got a Mikuni fuel pump that I had to scab in there because the tank location just doesn't feed the fuel altogether that well. You know, it could be higher for a gravity feed. It wasn't feeding that well. I believe this originally had a fuel pump because I found the takeoff for the pulse line. So I just rigged up another pump and away we go. I'll show you the carb from the other side. In order to get this carburetor on, the bowl actually was kind of bumping into the valve cover, and I know it's a little dark in there, but we'll try for it. You can see the bowl and the valve cover right there. And looking closely here, you can see a spacer that I had to make, a steel spacer about 1/8 of an inch thick with a couple of gaskets to bring the carburetor forward enough that the bowl wasn't hitting. Now the problem that I'm facing is I do not have enough room to sneak a nut in there with the carburetor body. This particular carburetor was mounted with machine screws, you know, rather than studs with nuts. And if I want to continue to use this carburetor, I think I'm going to have to unscrew that stud and use a machine screw in its place and literally bolt into the engine block, as opposed to having a stud coming out and throwing a nut on it. So because of the fact that I couldn't get a nut on there, I've got a pretty healthy intake leak, and that's why the choke is wired, you know, partially shut at this point, and that's what's keeping it running. So here's the original carburetor as I got it, and on the surface it looks like a carburetor and it looks more or less intact. However, a couple of things to point out here. First off, this throttle arm here is actually a choke arm. You know, you can see looking at the original choke arm where the detents are for the spring. Secondly, you'll see that there's no place for the throttle arm to rest against the idle stop screw. That's kind of problematic. But the big fun comes when you look at it from the business end of things. Look at that. What kind of butchery is that? Somebody stuck a throttle plate in there that's too small for the bore of the carburetor. You can actually see the gap in there, and I can flip this up and down. This thing would never idle. Way too much of an air leak. It would probably rev the hell out of itself with no control whatsoever. And then just to put the final straw on, you can see the flat side of the arm there, and what is being used as the throttle plate here is actually attached to the curved side of the throttle shaft. So who was thinking precisely what when they cobbled this mess together is entirely beyond me, but whoever it was, you know, would probably be better off, you know, underwater basket weaving or something as opposed to some engine work. What's particularly disturbing about the carburetor debauchery that occurred on this machine is I actually acquired this machine from a small engine shop. Right? Let that sink in for a second. Somebody that professes to service small engines did this. So half my inclination is just to leave it alone and leave it at that, and the other half of my inclination is to name that small engine shop so that anybody in my area requiring service would know to stay the hell away from them. For now, I'll just leave it alone. You know, I'd rather not get into, you know, public shaming or whatever the case may be. But the long and the short of it is yeah, small engine mechanic, huh? And I'm the queen. Hello! As you probably noticed, there is a little bit of smoke coming from the exhaust, and that is partially a function of me having to have the choke wired partway shut. I've got the mixture running just a wee little bit rich right now because, you know, making up for that lean condition with the intake leak. And the other half of the equation is when I loaded it up at home, I was right out of gas, except for some old two-stroke mixture that I have had sitting around for I don't even know how long. And I'm actually kind of surprised it's running at all. But, that being said, I'm still trying to make up my mind on carburetors. I might have a lead on a replacement carburetor from a fairly local friend. And I might consider stabbing on a Mikuni that I've got kicking around, and that could happen too. These old Tecumsehs are damn near bulletproof, and I really don't necessarily have a problem with the idea of, you know, continuing to run it without the governor. And throwing a Mikuni on there, I may or may not crack it open and actually remove the governor. We'll figure that out when it happens. One thing that is kind of putting a kink into my plans is the PTO shaft on this engine, which is actually 1 1/8 and not 1 inch. So, you know, pulley swapping and doing whatever the heck I might want to do just got a little bit more complicated. The other thing you'll see as I sneak in here is that the drive belt is horribly overdue for replacement. There's a big chunk missing out of it. Still drives, but, well, it ain't pretty. The transaxle cycles through all the gears nicely, and the high and low range work perfectly, and everything's good in the rear end. Everything feels great. There's no weird slop or noises or whatever. I've taken it for a run in all 6 gears and all 2 reverse gears, and that all feels good. And as you can see, I just took my marker and just put the gear designations back where I can see them clearly. And when you've been shifting a Peerless 2300 long enough and you get to one of these ropers, everything's screwed up. So, you know, towards you and off to the left is first gear and off to the right is reverse. However, that's not what I'm used to. Looking at M2, equipped with the 2300 Peerless, this is what I'm used to. It reverses off to the left, and the low gears, second and first, are off to the right. So, kind of the last thing I want to be doing is having myself, you know, in a delicate situation like the edge of a trailer, and, you know, expecting to put it in forward gear, and I throw it in reverse because I'm used to the Peerless, and next thing you know, Doc's dead. So, for now anyways, I figured marking it was the safe bet. Turning our attention once again to the transaxle on this old Sears. It is the Roper 633 transaxle, and I just want to point out once again, because there's a lot of people out there that are mistakenly under the impression that this transaxle is a Peerless. It is not. It has never been. Peerless never made the 633. They've never been anywhere near the 633 and have had nothing to do with the 633. The 633 transaxle was manufactured by Roper, and Roper supplied tractors, parts, and transaxles to Sears over the years, you know, including entire Suburban tractors. So there you have a quick little overview of the 71 Suburban 12 that I recently picked up, and I'm not really quite sure what to do with it just yet. I wasn't expecting to acquire a tractor. I was just kind of dancing through Kijiji, came across it, threw the guy a trade offer, he bit, I have this tractor. So I'll figure it out later. Whatever it is probably isn't going to be too far from its own reality, which means I'm not likely to strip it down and build a dedicated racer out of it or anything that freakadelic. Probably give it a fresh paint, fix the carburetor deal, ultimately probably change out the rubber, maybe lock the rear end, and I was even thinking about a lift arm or an A-frame or a tow arrangement, something for the rear, so that I can, you know, use it for towing and pulling and lifting and stuff like that. And past that, I don't know. It's just one of those, I'm gonna kind of let it dictate itself what I do with it, and we'll figure it out from there. No, I'm not gonna put it to a vote, what should I do with my tractor, because as you guys know, I do what I want to do, and that's pretty much the extent of it all. But I am open to suggestions if anybody has any really good ones. That being said, thanks for tuning in once again to Sprocket's Garage on YouTube. And just a little reminder that you can get your Sprocket's Garage swag. You can feed your adhesive addiction at sulphurcitydesign.com. And don't forget to check out the Sprocket's Garage Facebook page. Until next time, take care of yourself.